Friday edition of NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Craig Mish here with you for the next hour, 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern. We got you covered, give you a preview of the weekend. We'll also recap the Western Conference Finals in the NBA. It has come to a completion. We'll discuss that coming up. Also, Coach Young will be with us coming up a little bit later at the end of the show. We'll go through the NBA and also the latest on the WNBA and the fever, so to speak, that Caitlin Clark must have. My gosh, joining the NBA or WNBA, getting off to such a tough start. Jim Ghazali is with us from Legal Sports Report. We'll talk some baseball with Matt Latovsky and cover it all for you on this edition of NewsWire. So let's get started. Bit of a surprise, you probably would say last night, as the Dallas Mavericks are moving on to the NBA Finals. Not many had them at the beginning of the season getting there, and I don't think many thought that they would win in this nature last night. 69-40 at the end of the first half. Did you bet that one? Because you would have won by a lot. 29-point lead at the first half. Luka was just on fire. He had 20 in the first quarter. Luka Doncic, 36 points, 10 rebounds, 5 assists. Kyrie Irving playing his best basketball right now. 36 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists, and P.J. Washington chipped in 12. But the bottom line is Dallas is back in the NBA Finals again. Of course, they'll face off with the Boston Celtics. The first game is coming up next Thursday. And for the first time in 7 years, Kyrie Irving is back in the NBA Finals and says it's a long time coming.
It feels great, man. Definitely don't take this moment for granted because of how hard we had to work to get here, and we had to earn our spot into the NBA Finals. And we had to go against some great opponents, OKC, Clippers, Wolves, and I feel like they got us better as a team. They really challenged us on the defensive end, made us focus in, and I thank every single one of them, like I did the previous 2 series, for making me better. And it has been 7 long years, but it's also felt like the right amount of time, in order to reward myself, be in the locker room with my teammates and enjoying it. Long time coming, so we are going to enjoy this, but we obviously know this is just a pit stop in the journey, and we got to get ready for that court turning gold, as I like to say. The shoes turn gold, the jerseys turn gold, and as a kid, that's what you dream of, getting to is the finals and being able to play against the best of the best with the whole world watching. Man, I was enjoying it just like everyone else was. He had 20 points, I think, in like 6 minutes or 7 minutes, and you're just watching a special performance take place. But, as a teammate, you just want to continue to do the little things to bring the lead a little bit further along, and just continue to play well. We were happy where we were, but we weren't satisfied because we knew it was a long game. But when Luka starts off the game like that, I mean, we're a tough team to beat. So, kudos to him having a great series, a great playoff run in general, but just leading us that way and being able to kind of ease the tension a little bit and the emotions, starting off the game. You see our guy, Luka, scoring 20 like that. I mean, it eases everybody's pressure a little bit.
Yeah, great job by the Mavericks getting to the finals. We'll see how they do. Boston, of course, favored to win the NBA championship. Meanwhile, the Minnesota Timberwolves, great season for them as well. Some speculation on the future for a lot of their players. One of them, of course, Karl Anthony Towns, talked about getting this far, but how tough it is to get to the end of the line.
I mean, nothing's easy. Nothing's easy when in the playoffs, let alone NBA basketball. I think that, I said it early in the playoffs, we've always done it the Minnesota way, the toughest way possible. And I don't think mentally we were out or checked out or anything like that. We've been used to having adversity. We always find ourselves putting ourselves in a bad position and finding a way to get out of it. So it didn't work out, played with fire maybe a little too many times, and played a great team who played amazing and hit shots when they had to hit shots. So I'm not going to come out here at all and say, it was just all us against ourselves that cost us. They had to make shots and play well, and they did that. That team is well coached. They got great players. Got to give credit where credit's due.
Yeah, and credit to the Timberwolves. Great season for them, and hopefully their coach doesn't get fired like everybody else, including Cleveland. But it looks like they're zoning in on a new head coach. As we get to that, they're going to interview Kenny Atkinson and James Borrego. Those are the 2 names the Cavs are zoning in on right now. Potentially could hire one of the 2. They're securing permission, by the way, to talk to more assistant coaches. But as of right now, we know Atkinson, Borrego. Those are the 2 names involved. Meanwhile, the Kings are trying to lock down Mike Brown on a contract extension. The reported numbers are 3 years and $21 million. Brown is seeking $10 million annually. He's done a great job coaching the Sacramento Kings. I think everybody would agree on that. Meanwhile, I think everybody would agree the biggest surprise right now in basketball in general is the fact that Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever are off to a 1-8 start. I mean, this was the best basketball player in the history of college basketball, even had 20 points last night, but truly one player, not enough to get it done in this league. 103-88, a loss against the Seattle Storm. They're 1-8 on the season. Meanwhile, Jackson Robinson has withdrawn from BYU. He was in the transfer portal. He is now committed to Kentucky. And right now, the Wildcats are considered a top 25 team as their new head coach, Mark Pope, taking over for John Calipari. The New York Mets saga continues. Today, ESPN reports they made some roster changes, sending down a couple of players, including infielder Brett Beatty. Their former player, Jorge Lopez, who threw his glove into the stands, apologized for doing so, saying that he had no intention of disparaging the Mets organization. In a quote, he said he apologizes to his teammates, his coaches, his fans, and certainly he said he spoke candidly about his frustrations. Lopez was designated for assignment. Also, some scary news for the Arizona Diamondbacks. Their ace, Zach Gallen, left last night's start against the Mets after 6 innings due to a right hamstring strain. They have not announced yet as to whether or not he's headed to the IL. Usually in this situation, the pitcher does. And how about another home run, capping off an incredible month of May for Aaron Judge? He hit his 18th home run of the season in Los Angeles. In case you were sleeping, 8-3 the finals. The Yankees beat the Angels. Also, one game this afternoon at the friendly confines of Wrigley Field, Reds and Chicago Cubs. In the National Hockey League, a major upset last night. The Florida Panthers are on the brink now of headed to the Cup Finals. They defeat the New York Rangers in Madison Square Garden by a final of 3-2. They didn't even need overtime for this one. As they head back to Sunrise, they can close it out on Saturday and head to the finals. Western Conference Finals, meanwhile, continue tonight. We'll see if the pivotal Game 5 is indeed the case. Oilers and Stars, Joe Madden will have a preview of that in about 10 minutes. Hard Knocks, official announcement. The new season will begin on August 6th. The team that will be featured, the Chicago Bears. Of course, Chicago Bears with Caleb Williams and the number 1 pick. A lot of discussion as to the interest level of the Bears going into the season, so it does indeed make some sense. And Darius Slayton joins the Giants OTAs after finally getting the new deal that he was expecting. And that is the latest news, notes, and headlines for you here on NewsWire. Now, also keep in mind throughout the show, we got you covered on everything happening in not just the NBA and National Hockey League, but tons going on in Major League Baseball as well. And for that, Matt Latovsky is going to join us coming up next in the show. We'll dive into everything happening and take a look at the close odds there are for the home run champion in 2024. Kind of syncs up with the most valuable player award. Tends to be sometimes the player that ends up leading the league in home runs. Right now, it is Aaron Judge with 18. And for those of you who are in the midst of a hot fantasy baseball season, don't forget that tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Eastern, myself and Davis Maddock have you covered with Fantasy Sports Today. That's followed by Joe Pizzapia and Matt Stryker on Sunday morning with the same show, but a different flavor, covering some baseball and fantasy football as well. So those are some of the things that we're following for you here on the show today. Make sure you stay tuned for the entire hour, because as soon as we are done, we've got the early line coming up at noon, and we'll go through the entire schedule, and you can watch us all the way through the evening time with Game Time Decisions and Sports Rage. Lots of great programming this weekend, keeping you caught up on all of the playoff action. We'll be right back with more NewsWire on SportsGrid after this.
Using the parlays against one another, right, and being able to get a little bit of juice consig, I found to be a little interesting.
Believe me, all the rhombuses and parallelograms are constantly trying to search and find out those things every day. It's one of the battles that you use, as you expand the menu, you encounter new battles.
Game time decisions. Only on SportsGrid.
How fragile are these guys? It's amazing. They're supposed to be the greatest athletes in the world, and yet they can't walk and chew gum at the same time without getting hurt, for goodness sakes.
That Trout injury really is a bummer too, because people thought he was going to have a big year. And I look, I don't feel bad for the Angels. I don't like Mike Trout in Anaheim. I thought he should have left when his contract was up.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
The Warriors learn some of that split action that they run offensively and bring it to your own team. Folks, the name is Kenny Atkinson. Every time there is a job with a young core that needs to take the next step, I always think of Kenny Atkinson.
Only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. We have Matt Latufsky on the show today. We're going to kick around some baseball talk. We were, me and Michael Cohen, our producer, were talking about what we're going to discuss with Matt. I'm like, yeah, let's do the home run leaders. Let's talk about that. Now, we did this before the Yankees-Angels game last night, keep in mind. And the timing is great because Aaron Judge, hit another home run last night. So he's got 18. And on FanDuel, he's the favorite to lead the league in home runs. So, Matt, once again, thanks for coming on the show. Isn't it sort of incredible how if we would have done this back in April, there's no chance Judge would have been favored to win the home run title? And baseball's such a long season that it almost feels like until you get to August or September, nothing is definite.
Yeah, things can change in a hurry, definitely, because not only do you have guys get on these hot streaks and catch fire and move up these leaderboards, but you also have guys get hurt. You have guys obviously go on cold streaks as well. It just happens. Some of it's a function of who you're playing, where you're playing games, and other. It's just a function of guys who get locked in, guys who get in the zone. And we all know Aaron Judge is one of those guys who gets locked in and gets in the zone. So there's, in the long run, there's no surprise. You're right. A month ago, he wouldn't have been nearly this high, but I'm not surprised he's here right now.
Yeah, it's plus 165 over on the FanDuel Sportsbook. Maybe it's even more surprising that Gunnar Henderson, who's been fantastic, is number 2 at plus 550. Matt, do you think that there's anyone here that could potentially dethrone Judge? And I guess it's kind of fair to say, I know that Yankee fans don't want to hear this, it's fair to say that Judge has had some injury issues in the past, and if he was to miss any time, somebody else could easily surpass him. Do you like anybody else on this list here?
Yeah, I think Henderson has a real shot. The problem is where he is right now. I don't know if he provides a lot of value, but the thing I really like about him, when you look inside of his splits a little bit, he's hitting righties for homers. He's hitting homers against lefties. He's hitting them at home. He's hitting them on the road. Like, he's kind of doing it everywhere. He's not really, reliant might not be the right word, but he doesn't just do it one place or against just one type of pitcher. I do think Soto's interesting, and I think Kyle Tucker, he's right there right now. I like the park he plays in. He's not quite as good against lefties, of course, but he can still hit home runs against anyone too. And I think he's sort of interesting again, not great value. I think if you really want to go for that value, Soto offers the most of the guys you have on the board right now, or just maybe in general. I think there's probably a lot of bets still coming in on Shohei Ohtani, of course. And we know he can catch fire in a hurry, and he's not too far off the leaders, but he's got a little bit of an uphill climb. And I do think you got to worry about him a little bit with injuries as well. So I'm not sure he's a great value bet. But of those guys that were on that board, I think Soto provides the most value for sure, because he's another guy who can get hot in a hurry, another guy who's at a park tailor-made for him to hit homers. And I think he can do it in a heartbeat. He's got to stay healthy too. But I think there'll be opportunities there for him to move up that board in a hurry.
Yeah, contract season, as everybody knows, for Juan Soto as well. So this Mets story, here we go again, Matt, with some stuff with the Mets. This, Jorge Lopez is looking for a new team. Everybody knows by now, if you haven't heard the story before, he threw his glove into the stands. He made some disparaging comments, which have since been corrected. Some translation issues without a doubt. Matt, I think that this story is probably an opinion story at this point, because we just don't really have a lot of factual evidence as to what was said privately with him and the manager and the general manager, etc., how his teammates feel about him. We just don't know. So, Matt, I'm not going to ask you for facts. I'm going to ask you your opinion. What do you make of this entire situation? Do you think that they were right to dismiss Lopez? Do you think Lopez made a huge mistake, which should have cost him his gig with the Mets? Do you think that other players, had they done this, would have received the same fate? The floor is yours. What do you make of it?
Well, obviously there's some players who would not have received the same fate. I don't think there's any question about that. But yeah, the whole situation, because I was watching the videos as they were coming out in real time. And the first one that started it all, you went, oh, I don't think he said I'm on the worst team. I think he was talking, and then he was asked point blank. And again, was there a translation? Did he fully understand? Like he said, it's really tough to say at this point. But even if you take away the comments aside, when you throw your glove in the stands, when you act the way he did, and who knows what had been leading up to that too, it's just, I think, really tough to come back from that. And it's unfortunate if he truly didn't understand at all what was being asked of him. That's unfortunate for obvious reasons, but it still wasn't a good look at all preceding that, during that, after that. And yeah, did he deserve to get DFA'd? I don't know. I think after you do that, it's really tough to come back from. I think you got to DFA him. But you're right in that it would not have happened to everyone. I think that goes without saying. But I also don't think everyone would have spoken the way he did. Again, possible translation issues aside. So very tough. I think the frustrations of the whole season and the whole team are boiling over, and it's sort of getting dumped on one guy, which isn't fair. But it's just one of those situations where you go, who else would this happen to? The New York Mets. I don't know how many teams this would happen to.
Right. Yeah, they always find their way into some controversy. All right, let's move ahead from Major League Baseball to the National Football League, and let's talk about all these wide receiver extensions that have happened in the offseason. When Amon-Ra St. Brown got paid, I thought, okay, that's it. And then all of a sudden, everybody else started getting paid too. Nico Collins, Devonta Smith, Jerry Jeudy, Jalen Waddle just got $84 million. And look, I think people right now, Matt, unfortunately, are talking about the players who have not gotten paid. And I think that's kind of the next focus as we go into the summer.
Yeah, I think so, because there's some big names. I mean, the biggest names. And they're the ones who are going to command the most. And then the other guy, too, who hasn't gotten paid, who's extremely intriguing, is Brandon Ayuk, because that's a team that obviously has Super Bowl aspirations, just playing in a Super Bowl. And he wants a lot. He hasn't been quiet or shy about that, and he's a real important one, too. But Justin Jefferson, he's going to, I think, set the record. I think CeeDee Lamb will be very close behind. And then I don't know if Jamar Chase will get paid this year, but he'll be looking for it. So these are some big, big dominoes to fall. And the fate of the league a little bit rests in their hands.
Yeah, I mean, Jefferson, a very intriguing player going into the season. Thanks again, Matt. We'll be right back.
Using the parlays against one another, right, and being able to get a little bit of juice consig, I found to be a little interesting.
Believe me, All the rhombuses and parallelograms are constantly trying to search and find out those things every day. It's one of the battles that you know, as you expand the menu, you encounter new battles.
Game time decisions. Only on SportsGrid.
How fragile are these guys? It's amazing. They're supposed to be the greatest athletes in the world, and yet they can't walk and chew gum at the same time without getting hurt, for goodness sakes.
That Trout injury really is a bummer too, because people thought he was going to have a big year. And I look, I don't feel bad for the Angels. I don't like Mike Trout in Anaheim. I thought he should have left when his contract was up.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
The Warriors learn some of that split action that they run offensively and bring it to your own team. Folks, the name is Kenny Atkinson. Every time there is a job with a young core that needs to take the next step, I always think of Kenny Atkinson.
Only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire. It's time for the SportsGrid sound off here on the show. And if you've been paying any attention to the Kansas City Chiefs and their kicker Harrison Butker and some of the comments that he's made over the last week or so, this is not the show that we're going to talk about them on, because I don't do that. But I will talk about the National Football League. And indeed, Harrison Butker may not be involved in kickoffs in the National Football League. The reason why is the rules have changed. And they may actually have to have kickers who can make tackles. His special teams coordinator is discussing that. Dave Taub saying we may have to have somebody else on the field.
I like to have somebody that can go back, is able to make a tackle. I mean, Butker's able to make a tackle, but I really don't want him making tackles all year long. If you watch the XFL, we watched every play. I bet kickers were involved in probably at least 25 to 40% of the tackles. Either trying to make a guy bounce back or making the tackle itself or just missing the tackle. So, we don't want Butker in that situation, but he will be a kicker. He'll be a guy that we will use in certain situations. He's got a lot of ability to move the ball, whereas those other guys may not be as, apt at doing that. And, we'll use him. He can still kick a touchback if we need it. You're just giving up the ball. If we do kick a touchback out of the back of the end zone, now they're getting it out to 30. Instead of the 25. So that 5 yards makes a big difference. I mean, that's another 3% chance that, you're giving the offense against you to score. So what's the early evaluation on guys?
I wonder if other teams are going to do this. I mean, they only have, I think, less than 99 days to get this figured out, whether or not kickers are going to be on the field for this, but Chiefs already taking evasive action. Pretty smart by them. Now, also pretty smart by the Miami Heat to explore options if indeed Jimmy Butler doesn't want to play with them next season. Now, I have not heard that yet, so I'm very curious to hear the comments of our very own Kevin Walsh, who explore some possibilities if indeed the Heat moves on from Jimmy Buckets.
NBA Twitter always has plenty of rumors, and we have a few around Jimmy Butler because he is looking to get paid this offseason, understandably so. And he hopes the money comes from the Miami Heat, who could offer him a max extension. And if it does, then Jimmy's fine. He'll retire in South Beach just like he wants as one of the best players in the history of the organization. But if Miami thinks that contract won't be worth it, there will be other suitors. most notably the Philadelphia 76ers, who probably wish they didn't choose Tobias Harris over him some years ago, can now fix that with max money available as Tobias Harris walks out of Philadelphia. But a new team entering the chat, that's the Golden State Warriors, perhaps considering a win-now move to pair Jimmy Butler alongside Steph Curry. Now that has some juice. Craig, back to you.
Well, I'm sure that a lot of South Florida fans do not appreciate that from Kevin Walsh to hear that Jimmy Butler may be gone. But here's something South Florida fans can appreciate: the fact that our studios in SportsGrid, at least in New York, are right across the street from Madison Square Garden, where the Florida Panthers defeated the New York Rangers yesterday. But I digress. Let's get a preview of Game 5 of the Western Conference Finals with Joe Madden.
We have a pivotal game in the Western Conference tonight, Game 5, with the series tied 2-2 apiece. The Dallas Stars are the favorite at home and a total of 5.5. Looking at this matchup here, the Dallas Stars coming off a heartbreaking loss with the Edmonton Oilers just dominating, hitting Jake Ottinger hard. I'm expecting that bounce back out of Jake Ottinger here at home. I'm taking him over 26.5 save shots on goal, and I do think you could fire this one up to 28 plus save shots on goal to get some plus money. Edmonton is going to be able to get those shots tonight. Chris Tanev went out in that last game, and I expect that blue line to be weak for the Dallas Stars without him. Connor McDavid for his 4+ shots on goal at plus 140 holds so much value with that weaker blue line as well. So I will be riding that. But it also give me Jamie Benn for 1+ points. He's riding a 5-game point streak. That's coming in at minus 113. All the best in all of your bets, and back to you, Craig.
Thanks very much, Joe. We'll check back in with Joe on Monday on our next edition of NewsWire. Okay, coming up next here on the show, we've got Jim Gazzali. And I don't know if it's fair yet to call Louisiana the parlay capital of the country, but based on the latest data figures, it does appear that more people like playing parlays in Louisiana than maybe anywhere else in the United States. What does the data show? If you stay tuned, coming up next, Jim Gazzali joins us from Legal Sports Report. We'll go over those latest numbers in Louisiana and also touch on the revenue growth in Michigan. This is NewsWire on SportsGrid. We'll take a quick timeout. We'll come back and join our guest contributor from Legal Sports Report right after these brief messages. Don't go away.
Using the parlays against one another, right, and being able to get a little bit of juice consig, I found to be a little interesting.
Believe me, all the rhombuses and parallelograms are constantly trying to search and find out those things every day. It's one of the battles that you know, as you expand the menu, you encounter new battles.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
How fragile are these guys? It's amazing. They're supposed to be the greatest athletes in the world, and yet they can't walk and chew gum at the same time without getting hurt, for goodness sakes.
That Trout injury really is a bummer too, because people thought he was going to have a big year. And I look, I don't feel bad for the Angels. I don't like Mike Trout in Anaheim. I thought he should have left when his contract was up.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid.
With the onset of NIL and the transfer portal, it is allowing players to develop further in college, and guys that would maybe be stuck on the bench at a power program and not have as much shine are having the ability to find themselves in the spotlight.
Lane Kiffin came out and said we need to get bigger and more physical in terms of the offense and defensive lines, and that's why he went out and recruited that talent.
Inside the transfer portal, only on SportsGrid.
And now you have to qualify, and these majors, you got to go do it, man. Like, and it just comes off really petty to sit up there and be like, I'm not.
You know what you signed up for, so I don't like the pettiness, and I 100% think Taylor Gooch should be in the major championships.
Mm-hmm.
So in the same note, I'm saying this, but also it's like, hey, this is the world in which we live in right now, and you don't deserve anything.
Only on SportsGrid.
Remember that. Great to have Jim Gazzali from Legal Sports Report here with us to discuss the business of sports betting. We've got some numbers coming in financially from Louisiana. We'll start with Michigan. Jim, great to have you back here on NewsWire. Good to see you. I know get ready for the Belmont Stakes. I know you are. We haven't had a chance to discuss. I don't have I seen you since the Derby or the Preakness? I don't know that I have.
No, I think it's been about a month since we've gotten together, Craig. So plenty to catch up on, and I guess we can just roll into those Michigan numbers right off the top here. And I think for me, I'm usually most interested in seeing kind of how these sports betting handle and revenue figures start to trend as we get into the April, May, June, where there's no NFL betting available. And we kind of get into the dog days of summer. And for Michigan, it was a positive April, year-over-year increases in handle and revenue. Handle was $414.4 million in April, a 23% boost over last April, $43.4 million in revenue for the sports books, which was a 20% increase. And, as we've seen, really since the adoption of sports betting in Michigan, they are a mainstay in that top 10 sort of leaderboard, if you will, in U.S. sports betting markets. FanDuel, DraftKings, really the two dominant players in that space. BetMGM, 15% market share for BetMGM. A lot of that having to do with that brick and mortar casino that they have there. And they're the only those three, FanDuel, DraftKings, BetMGM, are the only three that have a double-digit market share in terms of handle. Just a couple of other notables from Michigan in April. ESPN Bet, about a 6% share of handle for the month, and Fanatics, a little less than 4% share of handle in April.
Yeah, and I think that right now, with the way I look at Michigan, is very similar to how I look at states like Minnesota, potentially in the future, how they could look like. And I think that, Jim, that is sort of the benchmark for how some of these states that don't have legalized sports betting can look at a state like that and say, hey, we could be one of those. Why they can't get it done, I have no idea. Okay, now this is a fascinating one, and it does tell a little bit of a story. I don't know how much it tells for you, but we're going to talk about the numbers here in Louisiana. Jim, you may have heard what I alluded to before the break, that Louisiana is the parlay capital of the country. I was being a little facetious because I don't know that, and I don't know the numbers. I think we're all the parlay capital of the country, to be honest, based on all these same game parlays that these companies are offering. But you have data that shows that a lot of the revenue that's coming in specifically on parlays. Tell us more.
Yeah, and the Louisiana bettors might be, in fact, the parlay betting capital of the U.S. They're certainly losing a lot of them, and padding the bottom line for the sports books there. $27 million the sports books won off of those combo parlay bets in April. The sports books posting a win rate, overall hold north of 13% for the month through those online wagers. And it's really been 2 months in a row that we've seen those parlays really accounting for more than half of the revenue earned by sports books in Louisiana over the last 2 months. So certainly big numbers for the sports books down there. And, like we've talked about over really the last, 6 or 8 months, where we've just seen the parlay handle kind of exploding, and the technology behind these parlay bets kind of exploding too. We've talked in recent months, Craig, about FanDuel really investing in the technology around pricing and putting together these bets for people in their sportsbook app. DraftKings, very similar. Caesars, very similar. So we're seeing a lot of these major operators continue to invest the time and resources into these parlays for their customers. They're popular for the customers. They're popular for the sports books, evidently, because of, just how much revenue they drive. And I was speaking to some executives from Caesars earlier this week, and they told me that trend is going to continue. They don't really see that sort of, coming to an end anytime soon. And, I think Louisiana is a pretty good example of just how profitable these parlays can be for operators.
Yeah, and I think that as it continues, there's no stopping it, and it'll be interesting to see if other states provide specific data on parlay bets, because I think that will tell a bigger story here at the end of 24 and into 25. Okay, we're coming to the end of the Triple Crown Challenge here. We've had the Derby, the Preakness, we've got the Belmont coming up here in June. Jim, let's talk a little bit about what's at stake here with this next race, and also a change a little bit in terms of customer acquisition for horse racing, specifically VIP customers, and a little technology in the mix as well.
Yeah, there's plenty of talk going around this Triple Crown season with the Derby, the Preakness, and now we have the Belmont Stakes coming up next weekend. And the conversations that I've been having have been focused on really the sports books getting involved in the horse betting market. We see, FanDuel has that shared wallet between sports and horses that we've talked about plenty, Craig. We have DraftKings, who has launched their DK Horse app last year. The Caesars Racebook, they have a partnership with the New York Racing Association. So a lot of these sports books have entered the horse betting market in the last 12 or 16 months, and they're using it as a way to cater a lot to these VIP customers. You see a lot of these partnership deals with racetracks. DraftKings has a lot of marketing and branding logos around the track at Saratoga they had last summer. They're continuing that partnership with the Belmont Stakes Racing Festival coming up next weekend. And this is allowing them not only to get their brand out there, certainly, but it also provides them the opportunity to offer some hospitality and experiences to those VIP high dollar bettors to introduce them to the sport of horse racing and, find a way to bring them across from sports to horses. NYRA, the New York Racing Association, told me that is certainly in play with their DraftKings marketing deal. Some representatives from Caesars, when I spoke to them earlier this week, said that idea is very similar. That strategy is very similar for them. They have a suite at Del Mar, which is a racetrack out in San Diego, where they cater to a lot of those high dollar bettors. On the technology side, a lot of the talk recently has been about making things easier for horse players or casual sports bettors to get introduced to horse betting, making the data for horse racing, which, admittedly can be quite complex if you're not familiar with it. So a lot of the conversations have been around how do we sort of distill that information, make it easier to digest for the novice player, and help them make educated bets. So sort of those two main talking points, catering to a high dollar bettor through the VIP experiences on the horse racing side, and then also sort of, distilling this information down, making it a lot simpler to understand for the novice bettor, so that, hopefully these sports books can, help grow that horse betting market.
Yeah, great analysis there, Jim. And certainly we here at SportsGrid definitely want to see the growth of horse racing, or at the very least continue to maintain its popularity. Thanks again for coming on NewsWire. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Craig.
Using the parlays against one another, right? And being able to get a little bit of juice consig I found to be a little interesting.
Believe me, all the rhombuses and parallelograms are constantly trying to search and find out those things every day. It's one of the battles that you know, as you expand the menu, you encounter new battles.
Game time decisions. Only on SportsGrid.
How fragile are these guys? It's amazing. They're supposed to be the greatest athletes in the world, and yet they can't walk and chew gum at the same time without getting hurt, for goodness sakes.
That Trout injury really is a bummer too, because people thought he was going to have a big year. And I look, I don't feel bad for the Angels. I don't like Mike Trout in Anaheim. I thought he should have left when his contract was up.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
The Warriors learn some of that split action that they run offensively and bring it to your own team. Folks, the name is Kenny Atkinson. Every time there is a job with a young core that needs to take the next step, I always think of Kenny Atkinson.
Only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire. We don't really have to have Coach on for his prediction on who's going to win the NBA Finals because he made it already with us last week. He came on and he said that whoever plays against Boston's going to win. So now we know who it is. It's going to be the Dallas Mavericks, right, Coach? Dallas last night, they took care of the Minnesota Timberwolves. Now, I'm being a little bit strong on that. Coach said that the Celtics have to play a lot better if they're going to beat the team from the West. But I would ask you, Coach, now that you have seen the Celtics close it out, and you've seen the Mavericks close it out. Have you changed your opinion at all? Do you think that the Mavericks, in the end, who are a dog, can beat the Celtics in a 7-game series?
Craig, good to be on with you as always, and I'm actually not changing it. I went on with Donnie and Ben, and I shocked Ben, and I said Dallas in 6. And here's why. I've had concerns with the way Boston has played during the playoffs, and people have gotten mad at me on social media because I've talked about they haven't been challenged. What I mean is that they haven't played against a team that was been at their full strength. Now you're going to tell me Kristaps Porzingis missed basically the last series, and that's true. But this is a Boston team that time takes off possessions, takes off quarters, takes off games. And I look at a team like Dallas that's really good defensively, and they got 2 players that at any point can lock this game up and put it away. Look at last night. Luka Doncic, 20 points, first quarter, outscored Minnesota 2019. Kyrie, second quarter, 15 points. They have guys, Craig, that they play what we call first and second side of the ball action, meaning you could put Kyrie on the first side, let him bring the ball, get him into some kind of ball screen action, throw it to Luka, and now Luka's on the second side. What does that mean? It's hard to load up. You can't just load up on Kyrie off the wing ball screen because now you throw it to Luka. Luka's got one-on-one. And I look at Luka as someone that was not playing the best efficiency-wise, but has really showed up the last couple of games. I thought those 4 big threes early on knocked that crowd out right away. And I just look at a team that is playing well. All their parts seem to fit. And I do like Dallas to win the NBA Finals in 6 games.
Now, I think that as we get closer to the game, Next Thursday is game 1, so we'll have a lot of different options to discuss with you. But the initial option, at least on the FanDuel Sportsbook, is the length of the series. The odds makers, Coach, have determined that this is going to be a lengthy one, at least from what I'm looking at here, because you have plus 210 at 5, plus 210 at 6. So that means flip your coin on one of those two. And even a 7-game series, you don't generally see this. Usually in a series like this, you see 3-1 or 3.5-1. It's plus 230. So you've already put the gauntlet down and said it's going to be 6 games. But naturally, I like to see this from a sports book where they're a little cautious as to predict whether or not it would be a quick series. It does not appear that they believe it will be one, at least on FanDuel.
No, I think they think this is going to be a long series. And if you think about it, if you even think about the series spread right now on FanDuel, over 5.5 games is minus 165. They're telling you right then and there, they think it's 6. But they don't want to put it at 6.5, because people may take the under and get plus money. So to me, when you look at this, it's a series that is lined up like this. Boston's going to give you one stinker, generally speaking. Okay? The question is can Luka and Kyrie steal you another game? I think they can. So now we're looking at 6 games right now. So if you'd rather play at the over 5.5 games and minus 165, I have nothing against that. I just think the better play I'm going to try and do is I just may take Dallas Mavericks plus 184 to win the series. Doesn't matter how many games they close it out in. People can look at the fact that maybe you take, if Dallas wins the series, Luka's going to be Finals MVP. He's plus 210 on FanDuel. I wouldn't be so sure of that because Kyrie is capable, and we've seen it, Craig, during this postseason, of taking the game over. So if you like Dallas, and you don't want to go Dallas in 6 because you think that's a wild projection, I think it's like 5.5 to 1. Maybe the way to look at it is take Dallas plus 184 and take a small sprinkle on Kyrie at 20 to 1 to win the MVP because it's going to be interesting having him go back to Boston. Remember when he was with the Nets, he came, he burned sage in a TD Bank Garden. I'm just thinking of the movie Celtic Pride with Daniel Stern and Dan Aykroyd when he hijacked, Damon Wayans when he gets off the plane from Utah. Yeah. I think this is going to be a fascinating series. Porzingis going against a team that he was supposed to be the cornerstone of Dallas. A lot of storylines here. But I like Dallas to win this series in 6 games, but it better off maybe to take it at plus 184 overall.
All right. Coach, I want to close out with this. I think it's an important conversation to have. And you're very educated on this, obviously being a coach of women's basketball, and I am not. I'm on the outside looking in. I don't want to go back to Patrick Ewing, but I'm going to go back to like Yao Ming, Shaquille O'Neal, Tim Duncan, first overall picks in the draft. They go into the NBA. I'm not saying they win the championship by any stretch, Coach, but they immediately, as generational type players, make the team better. Why has Caitlin Clark not made the Indiana Fever better? It's unequivocal. They're 1-8. They are not a good team. What has happened here?
I would blame some of it on the coaching, and I would blame on the fact that the players from last year aren't playing as well as they have. Let's Smith. You can look at Aaliyah Boston, right? They have not played as well as they have, and it's put a lot of pressure on Caitlin Clark, whose usage rate is the same as Indiana. Now, when people bring up a guy like Shaq, whose team won 20 more games this rookie year, I'm going to say this, folks. She is one of the best, if not the best, player to ever come out of college. Do I think she's Taurasi good? No. Do I think she's Candace Parker good? No. I'm talking about their game as it translates to the next level. Caitlin Clark will be better. She is one of the 20 best players in the WNBA, but she's not the best player in the sport. And I will say this, her teammates and her coach have to do a better job of helping her make that team a better team.
Yeah, I think this should be talked about a lot more, Coach. Thanks for bringing this to the table. Really appreciate it. Have a great weekend. We'll catch up again and preview the finals next week.
My man. Thanks, Craig.
All right, Coach James Young with us does a great job here throughout the SportsGrid network. We've got some last licks next here on this Friday.
Using the parlays against one another, right?
and being able to get a little bit of juice consig, I found to be a little interesting.
Believe me, all the rhombuses and parallelograms are constantly trying to search and find out those things every day. It's one of the battles that you know, as you expand the menu, you encounter new battles.
Game time decisions. Only on SportsGrid.
How fragile are these guys? It's amazing. They're supposed to be the greatest athletes in the world, and yet they can't walk and chew gum at the same time without getting hurt, for goodness sakes.
That Trout injury really is a bummer too, because people thought he was going to have a big year. And I look, I don't feel bad for the Angels. I don't like Mike Trout in Anaheim. I thought he should have left when his contract was up.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
The Warriors learn some of that split action that they run offensively and bring it to your own team. Folks, the name is Kenny Atkinson. Every time there is a job with a young core that needs to take the next step, I always think of Kenny Atkinson.
Only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire on SportsGrid. As we await some players' fate for the Pro Football Hall of Fame, what happens in the interim is they get inducted into the Clubs Hall of Fame. That's a great place to start. We got a lot of topics to cover, so let's get started. It's time for some last licks. All right, we flip over card number 1, and it is Drew Brees. Yes, congrats to Drew Brees. He's being inducted into the New Orleans Saints Hall of Fame class of 2024. In fact, Brees played 20 years in the league, 13-time Pro Bowler, of course, won a Super Bowl, won the MVP. And I think it's fair to say that he revitalized a team and an organization and even a city during Hurricane Katrina that sort of transcends football. I think that's fair to say. What's really interesting about Brees' career is that most people thought that when all the accolades were done and when he gets into the Pro Football Hall of Fame, as soon as he's eligible, I think it's 25 if I'm not mistaken on that, that he would have a great post-playing career, similar to Tony Romo or Tom Brady or Greg Olsen or some of these others. He went immediately into broadcasting, and it doesn't appear that is his future. Now, there have been some in the industry that think he should get another opportunity to do that. I hope that Brees is sort of able to figure it out. The other thing that I would wonder is why he's just not simply a member of the Saints front office or doing something as an executive, because it would seem to me, with the amount of knowledge that he has of the game and his ability to just find different players all over the field, never the biggest guy, never the strongest guy, but seemed like one of the smartest guys on the field all the time. I wonder why he doesn't go that route. Hopefully he will. We'll get that figured out for him. Now, for Larry Bird, the news is in. Indiana State and the Boston Celtics had a public ceremony Thursday. It's the official opening of the Larry Bird Museum in the Terre Haute Convention Center from French Lick. Larry Bird gets his own memorabilia from high school, college, and the NBA, interactive exhibits, interview with coaches, teammates, rivals. And Bird said, quote, "I think they got enough in there to keep everyone's interest." Bird also said there's so many items that bring back memories of his career. And truthfully told, with Magic Johnson and Larry Bird and documentaries that they've had back and forth and some of the stuff, I mean, that's really my first foray into the National Basketball Association growing up. I remember some stuff from the late 70s, not a lot, but really when I started watching basketball, it was that battle between those two teams, Larry Bird and Magic Johnson, and then enter Michael Jordan, enter the Detroit Pistons, all that stuff. But a great time for the NBA, no question. Very well deserved for Larry Bird, coming from this obscure school in Indiana State all the way to being one of the greatest basketball players of all time, which nobody would doubt. All right, finally, speaking of Indiana, how about the Indiana Fever? Let's end with this. Caitlin Clark, as we talked with Coach Young about this, Caitlin Clark is definitely doing one thing well this season, and that's racking up the technical fouls. Has anybody been paying any attention to this? I saw this last night. Caitlin Clark now has 3 technical fouls on the season. Folks, they have only played 9 games. What is going on here? Now, Clark is known for some trash talking, and some of the greatest basketball players of all time have also been known for some trash talking. That would include Michael Jordan, arguably the greatest college basketball player of all time, NBA player of all time, Kobe Bryant, and rest in peace, another one of those as well. But just 9 games into her rookie season, and Caitlin Clark is like getting teched up once every 2 games. This was not something that I saw coming at the beginning of the season. I think we're all rooting for success for Caitlin Clark. I gotta say, it is pretty stunning to me, and Coach made some great points about it, how the coaching maybe hasn't been great, and some of the players around her haven't been great. But all of this hype about being the best player ever in the history of college basketball, statistically speaking, getting all these NIL deals and everything, and then you go to the next level and your team is the worst team in the league. I don't know. It definitely invokes more conversation just about this, I think. And I'm glad we were able to bring it to the table on the show today. All right, that'll do it for our show today and our week of shows. Thanks to Jim Gazzali from Legal Sports Report, and thanks to Coach Young, as well as Matt Lutovsky. Those were our 3 guests on the show today. Also, a great job by our guest contributors for our SportsGrid Sound Off, including Kevin Walsh and Ben Stevens and Joe Madden, doing a great job previewing all these hockey games for us as well. Let's give you an idea as to what you can expect the rest of the day here on SportsGrid. As soon as I am out of here, coming up at the top of the hour, we've got the early line, followed by Pharrell Coast to Coast Game Time Decisions, in-game live and prime time, and then Gabe and Sports Rage tonight. You can see me tomorrow morning on Fantasy Sports Today, or on Monday morning for our next edition of NewsWire. Thanks to our associate producer, Frank, and for my producer, Michael Cohen. I'm Craig Mish. Have a great weekend. I'll see you back here for our next edition of NewsWire on Monday.
The numbers might look crazy, especially depending on where you think Jared Goff falls in the National Football League. I would consider him, maybe as crazy as this sounds, a top 10 quarterback.
And again, the theory behind paying your quarterbacks and your top-rated players, pay them earlier. The longer you wait, it only costs you money. If you have a top-flight wide receiver, pay him here.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid, your 24/7 sports wagering network. The Early Line.
Magical and historic season in Lincoln, Nebraska continues.
He is the best player in the NBA, but also in the biggest moments where the national media is watching.
NewsWire.
Something that we have never seen happen before with one of the iconic coaches in the game.
Pharrell Coast to Coast.
The team covers. It's automatic. It's every time. Not sometimes. It's every time.
Game time decisions.
Luka is actually far more dangerous from 3 on the road this year than at home.
This game here tonight, you may want to consider taking as many points as humanly possible.
In-game live, prime time.
We got not 1, but 2 coaches fired systems in place.
Sports Rage
this
late
sort
night.
of has letdown written all over it. It's going to be hard to match the emotion that they played with the other night.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
That was Aaron Rodgers' thing. It's your quarterback in the first round.
Yeah.
It's a luxury pick. We don't have the luxury. We're trying to win right now. I'm in a window right now, and you're going to say, no, we're going to plan this for the future. With a guy who had 4 years, 4 seasons ended by injury. 4. Like, Michael Penix is a walking injury. Like, what are you doing taking him in the top 10?
The Boston.